Hi Year 6, this is your maths video for Tuesday the 2nd of February, and what we're going to be looking at is finding equivalent fractions, percentages and decimals. So I've got a sheet here that is quite useful. So just to show us that when we've got 1/10, so 1 has been shaded out of a possible 10, you can also write 1/10 like this, okay? So if I move it over here and I can show you, maybe with something you're a bit more familiar with, the place value chart. So over here, if we have got 10 different sections, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if I've got 1/10, okay, 1 out of a possible 10, okay, I can also write that as 1/10, okay, so 1/10 can be written as 1/10. So this is the fraction and this is the decimal. If I end up with 2/10, if I take 2 out of a possible 10 here, so if I have got 2/10, then I wonder how I would write this. How would I write this? If I've got 2/10, if I write my 1/10 here as a decimal, so this is my 10th place. Yep, hopefully you got that right. You would write it as 0.2. So at the moment we are finding equivalent fractions and decimals. Okay, I wonder if you could guess then, how about for 3/10? What if we've got 3/10 and we want to write 3/10 as a decimal? So we look over here, we've got 3/10. We haven't got any ones at all, we haven't got any whole ones at all, we've just got sections here, we've just got our tenths here. Okay, so we've got 3/10, how do we write it? 0.3, okay? Hopefully you know this is hopefully revision and you've seen this type of thing before. What we haven't done is we haven't thought about how you can write it as a percent, okay? Now, the reason I've got these here is very handily, I take these off, I'll rub all of this out. If we're going to be thinking about percent, so percent actually means out of 100. So cent means 100. So century is 100 years, a centipede has 100 legs, but it doesn't actually, but it's supposed to. You have got 100 centimetres in a metre. Okay, so cent means 100 and percent means out of 100. Okay, so I should have a much better rubber than my finger, but it's all I've got just now. So if we're thinking of it as out of 100, so over here it shows you, we're thinking of it as out of 100, this is the percentage symbol here. Okay, so how you write a percentage symbol? Percentage. Okay, it just means out of 100. It just means how many out of 100. So I've just showed you that 1/10 as a fraction looks like this, and we've been doing a lot of fractions work. This is how you would write it as a decimal, but if you want to write it out of 100, we have here got 10 out of a possible 100. So you could actually write that as another fraction. You could actually write it as 10 out of 100. Got 10 out of a possible 100, and then if we simplified it, divided the top and the bottom by the same number by 10, we could get to 1/10, and it's actually 10 out of 100, which is 10%. Okay, so how about then, so that was my 10%, so that was 10 out of a possible 100, that was my 10%. How about if I've got 20 out of 100 then? So if I divided the top and the bottom by the same number, I'd know that this is actually 2/10. So So that's just an extra thing that we can know, but the out of 100 is what we're interested in. So if we're looking, we've got this over here actually, 20%, 20 out of 100. So 20 have been shaded in out of a possible 100. So it's just the same as fractions when we're thinking about fractions. Now if I wanted to write that as a decimal, because it's my 2/10, I can write it as my 2/10 over here. Okay. There's an interesting thing with this fraction here though. If you have a look, actually I haven't completely simplified that, have I? I haven't made that, actually, smallest I can make it, because actually I could half the numerator and the denominator here. If I half it, look what I get. So this is for those of you that are a little bit more confident. 20% is actually equivalent to 1/5, actually. Because 20 out of 100 is equivalent to 2/10, and I can simplify it to 1/5. Okay, so I could have actually divided both of these actually by 20. I'd have been clever enough. So this is all thinking about equivalent fractions, percentages and decimals. There's another way that I could show you which may help you. So I'm just going to show you lots of different ways of thinking about this. So I found these lovely apparatus to help us. So here, this is my whole 1. So my whole 1 is the same as 1, which would go here as a decimal. So I'd have 1 whole 1, which is the same as 100%, which is all of it, which is the same as 1 whole 1. Okay, so how about if I wanted to think about, let's do these where I've got, we're familiar with 1/2 and 1/2, aren't we? We know that 1/2, hopefully you know, is actually equivalent to 5/10. And that's how I get to my decimal of 0.5, because it's 5/10. On my place value chart here, if I had 5/10, it would look like this. So that's how a half is equivalent to 5/10. And it's also equivalent to 50 out of 100. Oh, sorry, I missed the 0. 50 out of 100. That's how I get to my percentage here. Okay. If we had, let's think of the same again here, but let's think about our quarters here. If we had, this is a little bit more difficult to see with the writing actually. So how is this one going to work? Let's have a look. So, oh no, this one's a bit more tricky. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. Each of those is a quarter, which is the same as 25 out of 100. Like you can see here, 25 out of 100, which is 25%. Okay, but how do I get to that as my decimal? Well, let's have a think. If this had to be out of 100, this is actually 25 out of 100. So it's actually 25 hundredths. So if I wanted to write this on my place value chart, I'd want 25 hundredths. That's how I get to that decimal. And that will be for some of you that are a bit more confident. Okay, I will put some links that you can watch some videos, some other videos that will maybe help you with this. In the meantime, I have got 2 different activities that I'd like you to have a go at. Okay, so if you're a little bit confused by any of that, let's just clear all of this away. If we hold on this for a moment, if you freeze the video on this activity, if you're not that confident, this would be the activity to start with. So I want you to express each of these here as a fraction, a decimal, and a percentage. So let's have a little look at the first one together, and then you can maybe do some of these other ones on your own. So if I had this as a fraction, how many is shaded out of a possible whole? Well, I've got 1 that is shaded out of a possible 2. So that's my fraction. Okay, 1. So if we look at the first one here, we can see that we have got 1 shaded out of a possible 2. So that's my fraction. So we're wanting to show each of these as a fraction, a decimal and percentage. I'll show you this sheet in a minute so you can freeze the video. But just to show you what to do, so number 1, I've got 1 shaded. So the green is 1 out of a possible 2. So my fraction is 1/2. Okay. Now, look up here to help me with this. So 1/2 is the same as 50 out of 100. So it's the same as 50%. Now this is going to help me to get to my 10th. That's why I did the percentage first. Because if I know 50 out of 100, then I know 5 out of 10. And the minute I get to out of 10, I can do my decimal because it's tenths. 5/10. So you may not need to write all of that, but I'm just showing you how you get to the decimal. Okay? So that would be your number 1. So you've shown it as a fraction, 1/2, as a percentage, 50%, and then the decimal. If you find the decimal harder, think of it out of 100 first, and that will then help you to either get to the tenths or to get to the decimal. Okay? So if we freeze the camera on this sheet, this is the sheet that I'd like you to have a go at. So there's 10 different shapes where you've got to write the fraction, the decimal, and the percentage. So freeze the video, and that's your activity for today. Now, if I show you this, if we freeze the video on this for a moment, this is very helpful if you are still unsure about the fractions, decimals, and percentage equivalencies, okay? So that will help you. Now, if you are confident, you can have a try at doing this. So this is slightly more tricky ones over here. Okay, so you need to draw out this grid. So, first one's not too bad. So the fraction is 3/10, so I know that that's in the tenths place. That's 0.3 as a decimal. And I also know 3/10 is the same as 30 out of 100, so it's going to be the same 30%, okay, because it's 30 out of 100. Okay, I might not be able to see that, it's too light. I don't know what I've done with my pen. Let's just write that on there to help you. So it's the same as 30 out of 100. Okay, and this is the same as 3/10 as we know, which is here. Right, what about if we've got something like 46% though? So 46%, well that is, if it's percent, it's out of 100. Okay, so if that's out of 100 as a decimal, well, let's go back to my place value grid. Okay, so if I want to write it as 46 hundredths, I'm going to write it as 46 hundredths like this, so that would be my decimal. Okay, so I'll write that in there. And then the fraction should be really easy actually. 46 out of 100. I don't want to do them all for you, but the 25% over here, this may help you. Okay, that's the next one that you do. So if you are feeling more confident, freeze the video, and this is your activity, especially Mrs. Stubbs groups. Have a little think about doing this. Okay, any problems, ask questions in Zooms, the Zoom meetings or the drop-ins. Okay, good luck, Year 6.